We have also another book that's going to be with this fashion book, which is an accessory book. This hat is absolutely very special. It doesn't have a label in it. I bought it without the liner in it. The dealer thought the liner was too dirty, and so they took it out. But this is a two-tone green that's interlocked together. It's not one fabric over the other. It's felt. But the workmanship and the stitch of linking these two tones together is truly a work of art. And that's what the millinery was like in those days. You know, it was an incredible, tremendous business, because people wore hats in that period. I'm trying to show pretty much some vintage black and white photographs that illustrate that, and a lot of them come from the movies. And this is a movie still from 1921, and it shows them having tea. They're all having their hats. They're all trimmed with feathers or big ribbons. They all have their gloves on. One lady has one glove peeled back so she can work her hand appropriately, and they're wearing fur scarves. And it's a scene that you just wouldn't see today. It just doesn't exist. This is one of those hats that you saw at the table here, and it's a fabric hat. And in the early 20s, the crowns were very wide to accommodate the hairstyles of those days, because even though everybody looked like they had short hair, some of them didn't cut their hair. And so they cut the front part short, but wadded up the long hair in the back to make it look short. And so the crowns were quite wide in those days. But this happens to be trimmed with dyed egret, and it's a fabric hat and has a wired brim. This was a common hat in the early 20s. It's called an aeroplane hat. And it's all velvet, and just a good example of the popular kind of fashion that happened at the early part of the 20s. And this is a early 20s hat also. This is a felt hat with fur trim, and they often wore these veils with the hats to accessorize it. This is an example of that. And then in contrast to what you're going to see next is a 1929 hat. And this, 1929 or 1930, this hat has a knit crown, and it has drapery in the back of taffeta. But I wanted to do it all in black and white, and I wanted her to have the cigarette holder and the smoke, and I tied everything together so that the smoke would separate from the background. And I had two scarves from the 20s that were black and white, and I fashioned a sleeve and a blouse for her to wear on this. Hats, this shows you also an example of the modern hats that they wore. And felt suddenly blossomed from a material that really was used for sportswear, and then it blossomed into an industry, and you could buy hats in every color and every density and every hue. And this is an illustration of a straw-trimmed hat on felt. And then the manly look was very important too. And I wanted to show this with a tie and a coat, and have her smoking a cigarette, because I just thought it fit in with kind of the macho look. And then I have a chapter all on, that was felts, and now we're getting into straws. And I had this hat box from Dobbs, Fifth Avenue, and I also had a hat from Dobbs, and so I coordinated these two for the opening of the straws. This is an early straw, 1922, and with feather trim. And this is a straw. This is a straw with and fabric with lace trim, all fanned out in the back. This is about 1921. This is translucent straw, and it's trimmed with silk flowers. And the trim is absolutely 100% real on this. Sometimes the dealers, they throw in a feather or something like this, but I always ask the dealer when I made a purchase, I says, was this trimmed by you? Or I can usually tell now, so this is really an authentic one. This one too. I call them craft hats. And they, all these petals that are around this big sunflower are all silk. And the leaves and the stems of the flower wind around the brim, and you can see the quality of the workmanship that went into this. The gold paint accented certain areas of the hat,